call me that, you get a bottle. What you have is how to get the water. On Let's Talk this morning, attack on NLC president. Organized labor declares nationwide strike. I had to pause to drive the effect home. Organized attack on NLC president. Organized labor declares nationwide strike. And then, off-season election. INEC gets another chance to restore electoral confidence as violence threatens the November 11 elections. Violence. Report of violence threatened the November 11 elections. This morning, I have Mr. Samson. He is a public affairs analyst, he's a politician, he's a social commentator. Mr. You're welcome.
A big good morning to you, one and all, listening to us this morning. Privileged to be here as always.
All right. This morning, we're going to be analyzing the elections in Imo, Bayelsa, and Kogi states. Particularly, all of the three states have had report of violence at one point or the other. Imo is prevalent. Imo is being consistent for the wrong reasons in the media for insecurity concerns. I'm going to date back to, okay, let's forget that. In recent times, the Nigerian Labour Congress had a protest in Imo State, which was marked by thuggery and people, an NLC president attacked, and that has casted a heavy haze on if election was going to be conducted with ease and hitch-free in Imo State. In Bayelsa State this morning, we reported that the PDP chieftain was attacked in Bayelsa State, and several other reports in the media how one candidate or the other had paid thugs to disrupt the peace in Yenagua and other local governments in Bayelsa. If you go to Kogi State, there was a report of something not really, or maybe it's on the card playing of insecurity in that state. So, an INEC smarting from the uncertainty of their integrity. Nigerians, some Nigerians, I won't say majority because I do not have the statistics, are saying INEC lied to us in the general election. We may not take them seriously, and then it's before us now. Some Nigerians' mind of the battered image of.
Give an instance. Here in River State, we had a whole lot of issues, but it wasn't as bad as it is now in Imo State, because we had more calm characters as against one. I'll give you an instance. The violence and the violence and the pressure at the time and intimidation, in the 2023 election in River State, seemed to be coming at the time from an end to all candidates. So if you look at the SDP candidate, he was calm, calling for peace. If he had reacted, River State would have been a theater of war. I look at the APC candidate, he was calm. I looked at Dumolulu Briggs, he was calm for Accord. I looked at the Labour candidate, Beatrice Itubo, she was calm.
Territory this morning, did not come out all guns blazing and wasn't violence.
Of course, every level of violence in the process of campaign, was linked to the ruling party, and there were a lot of linked to the ruling party.
No clear-cut evidence.
It was linked, just the way these ones are linked to, of course, the incumbents, and of course, but my point is that it became a little bit manageable because every other person took a disposition of peace. Now in Imo State, I have said, and I'll continue to say, that what's happening there you cannot. Remember when we had the issues of the IPOB or people attacking the security and all of that? And I said you cannot have a chief security officer as a governor, and under his nose, security officers are being killed, communities are being invaded, and people are scampering for their lives, and the governor keeps saying things that doesn't make sense. From the inception of his tenure till now. And I said, look, the governor has a hand in it. And these are clear practical issues. Look at Bayelsa. In Bayelsa today, I heard the deputy governorship candidate of the APC saying, chase them to the river, chase them to the river. You don't use such words. I'm coming somewhere. Chase them to the river. That is violence. That is inciting violence already. And I think that these things are established in the Electoral Act as a violation to the electoral process. Now, if you go to Kogi State, there are widespread allegations that the governor is intimidating candidates of other political parties. And I listened to Natasha, who is now a senator. She, recounted her experience, how she was attacked, her attempts of assassination was made on her and all of that, even prior to these elections. And the same thing is still happening. So you could tell that this is a part of our political system now.
But again, that's the makeup of political parties. The makeup of political parties is certain violence, perpetuating all kinds of electoral offense on other parties. I want us to look at the entity INEC.
Yes, that's where I'm headed.
Okay,
that's where I'm headed. I was about saying that, you have all of these trends, and there is an electoral act has been managed by INEC, and INEC had suddenly become incapacitated to implement the clarity of those laws, rules and regulations that ought to guide these politicians and their attitude in course of campaign. Now, INEC has become quiet, INEC has become silent, the police have become complacent, they have become culprits to the crimes. It clearly means that the election cannot go free and fair. Because if at this point, people are acting in impunity, attacking systems in broad daylight,
but do you blame INEC?
Yes.
How do you blame INEC when, hold on, is INEC truly independent? That's the $1 million question. How do you blame someone who was appointed by a top-ranked politician, or was appointed by maybe a group, maybe appointed by, say, the president? The regs appointed by the executive. So not just the executive. In states, you have the state regs appointed by the state governors. Truly paid salaries paid from the state coffers, from the federal government coffers. You expect that person to be independent?
I wanted to climax to that point.
Go on.
I wanted to start with INEC. And in speaking about INEC, I'm saying that they are responsible because INEC has the powers to sanction a political party that violates the Electoral Act. And INEC is not doing that. It is not my mother or my grandmother that will do that. It's INEC. And where INEC is silent, in a place where they're supposed to speak up, to at least send a warning to the public to say, look, Imo, this is what we are observing, and should you continue like this, we are going to do this. INEC is quiet. They have never spoken. I cannot remember where INEC has said, look, this political party, you're violating the Electoral Act, so we're going to sanction. I've never heard INEC. What you see INEC do is that when there's an election crisis, political crisis, internal crisis, INEC will show up in courts, and they're going to either play by the bidding of the highest bidder, all right, to say, oh, this primary is held or it didn't hold. But INEC is not speaking to the acts in the campaign, which is what we are seeing now at the moment. Violence everywhere in all of the states, and INEC is silent. So where do you expect that they will conduct a free and fair election?
You think that INEC seem to be playing to the highest bidder in issues of elections?
INEC seem to be out for a purchase, because how do you justify your silence? You're supposed to be the judge in the matter, and you're quiet, and others are complaining, and you're not saying anything. And this has become the trend in our electoral process.
Yeah, so someone actually, a lawyer, told me that if we really want free, fair, and credible elections in this country, we should recave, we should review the 2022 Electoral Act. Now, in doing so, make sure that INEC sources for its fund in that act, and then totally push INEC away from the federal government. Let funding, let the legislatures be the ones to screen, and there should be, just like you elected politicians buy form. If you want to buy INEC, you buy a form and you're screened, you go for interviews, and then when you pass that interview, INEC should have a different entity unattached to the executive. Will that make any?
I agree with you to some extent.
Okay.
I agree with you to some extent that the appointment of personalities into INEC shouldn't be, I know the executive has, the sole responsibility to appoint, all right, but then I think it should not be a political makeup, all right. I think that INEC is a commission, and like every civil service,
okay,
I expect that people grow through the ladder of the civil service and attain those positions. I think that amendment needs to be done. But as per INEC sourcing for funds as a way to mitigate the influence of politicians over their affairs, I don't think that is the solution, and I'll give you my reason.
Okay.
If INEC decides to depend on the international community for their funding, or private organizations for their funding, everybody has a political interest, including the international community, and they can decide to influence the process too, as much as government is. But I think that what we need is the credibility of how persons emerge as INEC commissioners.
Stronger institutions.
Yes, we should build a stronger institution, as I've always advocated. But how do we do that? Emergence into positions of the REC should be reconsidered and readjusted. We have to review it. How do you become a REC? So it's something I believe that people have to grow through the ladder. In growing through the ladder, you are trained by the principles and values and ethos of that career, as growing as a civil servant into the hierarchy of the electoral umpire. I know civil servants are also corrupt, but there's a discipline. There's some kind of discipline, that you will see in people who grow through a service. And when they are monitored and they know that they are monitored, their lifestyle is monitored, they become a little bit cautious. But where somebody, a politician who wears a political party cap, branded shirts and all of that, as known to the public, as seen in the social media, available on the media, is appointed by proxy through maybe his godfather or brother or cousin or uncle, he goes there with the mindset of impunity. Because if my uncle, who is a known politician, can bring me into serving in this capacity, then it means that I can do anything he wants. There's no caution, there's no fear, there's no restraint. So I do not see, today and tomorrow, I do not see INEC conducting a free and fair election. And I have said that, yes,
that was going to be my next question. Ever going to get it right?
Cosby, I am here to speak the truth. At this age, I should be telling the truth. And I'm in public. And I'm saying this from my observation. And the facts and the statistics are there for us to run by it. I do not see INEC conducting a free and fair election in Imo. I do not see INEC conducting a free and fair election in Kogi. I do not see INEC conducting a free and fair election in Bayelsa, because the electoral process, which is the foundations, are faulty. If INEC cannot speak at this point of campaigns where there are clear rules, I mean, yes, we can make new laws, but what we have now in a reasonable, sane society can serve us, where people work with conscience. But here right now, people don't work with conscience, and it looks as though impunity is the cap of every man right now. No restraint, no caution, nothing. Now the EFCC or the police that is supposed to go after these people to checkmate them are complacent. They are culprits. The National Assembly, who is supposed to review the activities of INEC to say, look, you are derailing. How come you cannot caution political parties? They are direct beneficiaries of the inglorious actions and acts of INEC. The illicit transactional attitude right now of INEC, those legislators are direct beneficiaries. So the system is corrupt. The system is dead to conscience. Dead to conscience. So I do not see INEC conducting a free, I mean, up till now, no statement to the deputy governorship candidate of Bayelsa to caution him how that he had spoken, inciting violence. Now, the government...
Isn't that, is that the job of INEC? Isn't that the job of security operatives?
Yes, they are supposed to, but INEC has a responsibility too.
What should have been INEC responsibility?
To sanction the political party. At least a cautionary note. Yes. To say, look, you this is against the electoral act. Please, and it's still in the electoral act. To say, look, we would not fold our arms to watch political parties make violent statements because at the end of the day, it's going to jeopardize the work of INEC.
Sure.
It sure would jeopardize their work. So nobody's speaking. The security agencies are not speaking. INEC, they're not talking. And the worst of it all is that the civil society organizations that is supposed to be the conscience of society, they're not even speaking. They are quiet. They are not partisan. Nobody's talking. I am amazed that somebody makes such a statement in Bayelsa, and up till now, no statement from civil society organizations. But when you begin to take a census to enumerate the number of civil society organizations that we have in all of these states, they're going to run into almost 1,000. If you come to River State and ask, they'll tell you there are 500, and nobody has spoken. So how do you expect a free and fair election? These are telltale signs of what's going to happen. And at the end of the day, it is the strategy of politicians to cause voter apathy, so that they can, at the end of the day, be able to hijack the system. And that's what's happening here. So I do not. Who are those controlling these systems in the first place? I mean, look at what's happening everywhere. There is no sincerity on the part of INEC. You say you want to. What stops INEC from conducting an election all electronic? From the point where you have to do your verification, to the point where you have to vote, to the point where the result can be transmitted. Why are we not doing fully electronic? Why do you want us to, do our verification electronically? You go and vote manually. The votes are counted manually. It is not electronic. All right. So you don't have any empirical way to verify and trace. You are using ballot paper. The person comes to thumbprint and somebody comes to count. The same ballot paper.
I thought we were growing slowly into that.
Growing slowly.
We just jumped from A to
the loophole was deliberately created. Deliberately created.
You think so?
It makes no logical sense. It makes no sense that currently the rate of persons who buy recharge card by the roadside is so infinitesimal. In fact, going into that business now is almost not lucrative. It's not lucrative because
people buy,
because people can buy digitally. You can buy from your bank app. You can borrow airtime. You can do all sorts through your phone. So it becomes, you can't manipulate it. You cannot. It's difficult to manipulate. If you request for airtime and the bank does not send it, you have a way to trace it and it will be resolved. It is not possible that the bank will tell you we cannot solve the problem. We can't trace out that you had asked for airtime of 1,000 and you didn't get it. It's not possible that the bank will say that. That is the benefit and the advantage of the science age. So why would INEC tell us to do a verification electronically and you have to vote manually? They have to count manually, results will be declared manually, and then you cannot expect that they will snap the paper, which can be swapped and changed and manipulated, hijacked and manipulated. You snap it and upload in the iRev, and that becomes a validated result. That is a big loophole, a valley created between the starting point and the end point. And it is created so that you can manipulate the middle of the field, the game, to determine an end result. It's that sensible. It's that simple. So INEC deliberately created that loophole.
That's what you're saying.
No, they should prove me wrong. And what will it take, Bill? What will it take to have this process become fully electronic? What will it take?
It takes money.
Money?
It takes. It
is far cheaper.
It doesn't take.
It is far cheaper. Do you know how much INEC expense in printing ballot papers?
Did you know how much INEC spends buying beavers?
No. We already have the beavers.
No. I mean,
it is just a function of programming.
Yes. So if you have the beavers, you also need beavers. It's not a device for voting. It's a device for accreditation.
It can be configured. It can be configured. Bill, I am telling you, Cosby, that it can be configured. It does not take anything extra to be able to do that. It doesn't. I mean, okay, I have my phone. Any kind of phone can get recharge card. Any kind. I can use a Nokia touch phone, alright, that is not an Android phone, and get recharge card on my phone. I can just use a USSD, right? Alright? I can just type some figures and then I get airtime directly from my account to my phone. I can do that. That's the same thing the beavers machine can do. It's like your phone.
But do not forget
the beavers machine.
Nigerians are very smart people.
Oh, Cosby.
What makes you feel that this is so proof that it cannot be manipulated?
We didn't have issues with the verification of voters. We didn't have issues. Manipulating that process of verification was difficult. Where there was manipulation in the electoral process was on the ballot paper and on the result sheets, because these things are manual. That's where manipulations came by, and the manipulations were validated by the same electronic device that was now used to snap and upload. So we don't need extra money to be able to. The beavers machine is like your tab, and you can configure it into what you want to use it to achieve. So it will be cheaper for INEC to go fully electronic.
Alright. Okay.
Printing of ballot papers, they tell us, is not in Nigeria. So you can imagine, and it cannot be printed, the cost cannot be in naira, it will be in dollar. So INEC by all means has created a vacuum to change the voters in this country, and I think that is a deliberate act to deny us our rights. INEC cannot, by all reasoning, be just in this process.
I'm glad that's your opinion, and I'm not going to fight you for it. If you are going to expand and look at what the role INEC played in the 2023 elections and how constrained INEC was because of the perception of Nigerians. You are not alone in this line of thought. Nigerians believed that INEC, the process was queued even before it started, and that they were not going to expect something. I think that's where we started getting it wrong. And then what happened with the Supreme Court, and now we have a precedent. I think it is something that we really need to sit back as a country if we believe that we will rise again and look at the process intently and see where we got it wrong and where we can fix it. I'm not talking about just Nigerians, I'm talking about INEC. And this election in Imo, in Bayelsa, in Kogi, had given them that opportunity to do so. I'm hoping that they will do better. Let's move on. Organized labor under the aegis of Nigerian Labour Congress and Trade Union Congress resolved to commence an indefinite strike in Imo State midnight yesterday. So it started yesterday to protest the alleged violation of workers' rights as well as the recent brutalization of NLC President Joe Ajero, which happened during a protest in the state. The leadership of the NLC and TUC, which addressed a joint conference in Abuja yesterday, said they would also begin a nationwide strike by Tuesday, November 14, if their demands were not met by the federal government and Imo State government. The strike notice came as human rights activist and lawyer Ebolu Adeborowa urged organized labor and civil society organizations to resist the oppressive tendencies of the state and its collaborators, saying that the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration has shown lack of regard for labor. Is that true?
Well, the president is the one sitting on the chair as president, and of course there's so much expected of him. At least statements, discountenancing the actions ongoing in most of these states. And but then, of course, there are persons appointed by the president who have direct oversight on certain issues, especially when it has to do with security, and of course, especially when it has to do with labor. And because we have a very, very compromised system where everybody is compromised, it becomes difficult for people to.
Everybody compromised?
Almost everybody.
Okay.
Almost everybody is compromised.
Okay.
It becomes really difficult for people to, sit up to their responsibility. The president has so much on his table and is not expected so much, as at this moment to speak on issues. He could just internally call the governor and speak to him. But on the surface, the IG ought to speak. We're expecting that the IG makes a statement. I have seen that the commissioner had been changed in Imo State, but that's not enough. There's got to be clear warnings to the various actors. The one thing that the president's statement would do is to not just in the eyes of the public sever him from compliance to all of these illicit actions, but to send a signal to the governor that look, nobody's above the law. But would the president do that? That's up to him to do. His advisors, political advisor, and media publicists should be able to speak to him on it. But where I have concern is that there is an IG and there's a commissioner of police, and I'm expecting, I'm hoping that the new commissioner would be able to speak to the issues and ensure that there is peace. But from the feelers in Imo State, people are relocating, and I am concerned. And like I said the last time, you cannot say the governor is innocent in this, because there are clear issues now. I expected that the governor, when he had the chance to speak to the public, he would say, look, these are the claims by labor that I'm owing 10 months salaries, or I've not paid pensioners. That's a lie. These are the facts. These are the evidences. I have paid them. But the governor didn't talk about that. The governor rather said that labor was meddling into the politics of Imo State. How do you say laborers are meddling into the politics of Imo State? That's a cheap statement to make. And for him to make that kind of statement, it means that the governor is guilty. How are the ones who decide? If you truly know the people are the ones who decide, you would do everything to appease them. But you ignored everything that would have appealed to the conscience of the voters and started talking about the labor being involved in the politics of Imo State. You didn't address the issues that workers are being intimidated, workers are being owed salaries. You have not implemented the 30,000 naira minimum wage. You didn't speak to those issues. The governor clearly ignored it. So it means that, we always say that silence is consent. That means that the governor's silence is to the fact that these things he's guilty of.
Let's draw back the focus on the Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration. We said a renewed hope agenda. Renewed hope. And one would have expected a break from the norm, from how the Nigerian Labour Congress and every Nigerian worker are treated in the past administration, and then hoping that this new government would have done something differently. Labour had engaged the federal government since the past 4-5 months, and the story had always been the same. Labour would want to go on strike, the federal government will call it back. What are the demands of Labour? Let's begin to understand it, very well. Labour is saying cushion very excessive. I thought that something within the region of 100 will be okay. Well, but that's me. The government never made any move aside the fact that it did approve 35,000 naira temporary wage increase for all federal workers. Listen, federal workers, not state, not local government. And then it did not pressure the states to follow suit. So which means, as a federal worker, if my salary was 50,000 naira, and I start receiving 85,000 naira because of the 35,000 naira joint, the plus my counterpart in the states will still be stuck with 50,000 naira, which I find very unfair, inconsiderate. And then you talk about other very salient issues. Those who are not working. How do you? National Assembly members are demanding for SUVs of 100 and something million naira.
Yes. The country is in comatose. But then, I want to also make it public that there are steps in agreement to labor that federal government has met at staking. First is the 35,000 naira
wage increase. Temporary. It's going to be for
3 months.
6 months.
So 6 months.
Yes.
So I heard that has been paid. All right. And these things are, in the interim to be able to manage the situation. That's number one. And the president has also said they will increase the salaries of workers, but that is something they have to consider in the long run because it's money that is involved. You won't make, when you're making economic plans, you don't just get up and declare figures and agree to things that you don't have the capacity to. So government has to find a way to ensure that they have the means to be able to meet up to any agreement that they go into with labor. But then the CNG buses are not something that can be manufactured overnight, and I think they're in the process. There has been some level of commitment from government, and one of them is the palliative, the money that was given to states, 5 billion naira given to states. I have noticed that I think Oyo State had increased the salaries of the civil servants in the state by 25,000 naira. All right, 25,000 naira. That is a state, not federal government. So because I'm saying this because you said, the 35,000 is to benefit those federal workers, and then what happens to the states? There had been an intervention from federal government to the states, and it's expected that the states would, work in conscience, good conscience,
so
to ease the burden.
A state with its executive that does not have conscience, all right, and does not implement it.
The federal government cannot, the federal government cannot force the states to do that. But in every state, the states are components of the nation. Now, the strength of their civil society organizations, the Rivers Indigents and the civil service, the staff of Rivers State Civil Service, what have they said? What are they saying? They've not said anything. You have to mount pressure. Federal government will not come and say, Rivers State, you must pay. The state has been given and Rivers State Civil Service. Why can't the state government say, okay, we are giving 25,000 naira additional? So Rivers State will have to demand that. The civil servants in Rivers State have to demand that. The civil society organizations in Rivers State have to take that up. If they don't, then the civil servants in Rivers State will continue to suffer, and we can't blame federal government for that, because federal government has been good enough or kind enough to assist the state with 5 billion naira. That's number one. Now, number two, like I said, federal government is making great efforts. I know civil servants who have received the 35,000. It's not so much, but that is a step, the commitment they have with labor. That's number one. Number two, I'm quite also aware that the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation is currently processing the conditional cash transfer, details of Nigerians, households, to be able to pay them 25,000 naira per month, for the duration also stated. And that's the reason why I think about 400 billion naira was, put back into the supplementary budget to be able to access that fund. So there is some measure, fairly to the federal government, there's some measure of sincerity so far that they have been able to pay this 35,000. From saying, okay, we're going to devote 100 million into buying fertilizers to give to farmers, knowing that You know, in the rural areas, what they do mostly in River State is farming and fishing.
All right, plan to open up the phone lines and maybe receive calls. All right, plan to open up the phone lines. Alpha and Omega. Phone lines are ringing already. 0907 084 9073. Hello, good morning. Good morning. Step away from your radio set so we can hear you properly. Is Let's Talk on 99.5 Wish FM. Tina, welcome. Go on, Tina. It's a question of integrity. Thank you very much for your contribution, Tina. All right, 0907 084 9073 0702 5002 Hello, good morning. Good morning. Otto Gostam Lugard, I suppose.
Yeah, I want to. Yeah.
Go on.
You don't discover I'm not ready to implement that. Here's the fact. I don't see any conducting a credible election in Dhaka, Imo State, and Kogi State. I don't see it fine.
Really?
Yes, I don't see it coming. Because at the end of the day, these people will still come and tell us the news we want to hear. That what happened? The people machine didn't work. What didn't work? Because you are there, you make use of your Android phone. You navigate through apps and apps. Does that mean that INEC cannot navigate through that by transmitting results electronically? Does that mean we cannot have various ways to vote?
All right. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you very much, Otto Gostam Lugard, for your contribution. I must also say that we're live on Facebook, www.facebook.com/wish99.5 FM. Hello, good morning. Good morning, The Real Gift. Welcome.
Thank you very much, sir.
Go on, Real Gift. Oh my goodness, The Real Gift, you need to call back. Hello, good morning. Good morning, Chris. Welcome. Welcome to Let's Talk. What did you see? What did you see?
I think of the staff in constitution and still in our position. And you people going to practice here. As soon as you are putting get much just like this goes now. And this is coming. These programs are recording. But you can't tell me this is what I say. If you play a phone, not what I have on my phone, so I think it has not put out they are expecting them to conduct election in they must stand to of ruling and the people that I think they have like the police. When they want to say something, when something happens That's how I think we are being controlled by powerful politicians.
All right. Thank you very much, and that's what you think. Hello, good morning. Good morning. All right, really good. Go on. I think it was attacked before he was removed. I think they had attacked before the police came to save the day. All right. Thank you very much for your contribution. Hello, good morning. We'll take just 2 more calls and then come back to the studio. Hello, good morning. Christian, we are welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I can hear. Go on. Just go on.
Yes. One would think of I think that I want to ask who is the INEC? INEC is set up of Nigeria. And as far as I'm concerned, the problem with Nigeria is the corruption that is embedded in most of us. It's not an institution because it's Nigerians that are supposed to work with the institution. Why are not that? So from here, they are getting to come and take money. What of the state agents are not that? How do you give what you don't have? And you expect the credit to go.
Thank you very much, Christian, for your contribution. I think that's where we drop anchor. We're taking calls this morning, and then let's get your final submission this morning.
Well, first I would appeal to every Nigerian in this off-season elections to be careful. Those that I know in Imo Bayelsa, I've told them, you just have to be careful. And if the place is too hot for you to stay, you can just avoid the process, so you don't sustain injuries. So everyone should just be careful, and if it may benefit you tomorrow, but not benefit your offsprings. So tomorrow, it may benefit you today, but it will be against your children tomorrow. So it is always better to sow a better seed that will benefit every other person, because there is always an uncertainty of what tomorrow will be, and it's not one person's responsibility. I have seen in this country where citizens speak out, especially using the social media, and persons in high places of authorities are forced to do the